A minimum salary of £29,000 is required if people want to bring their foreign partners to the UK. Originally, the amount was supposed to be even higher, and that's why I have the title of my video that way. The British government is not increasing the mandatory minimum salary for people who want to bring their foreign partners into the country as much as initially announced. So in the future, at least £29,000 will be necessary, as the Home Office announced in London on Thursday. Previously, the threshold was £18,600 annual salary, which was originally due to be more than doubled to £38,700. That would have allowed only 30% of Brits to bring in foreign partners. It was initially unclear whether the amount would be increased further later, though. The higher minimum salary for the immigration of family members is one of the measures with which the Conservative government wants to drastically reduce immigration. In the future, foreign skilled workers will also have to earn significantly more than before in order to be allowed to work in Great Britain. There was indeed sharp criticism, especially from business, but also from sectors such as art, culture, and education. The opposition Liberal Democrats criticized the higher salary as another ill-thought-out idea from the government, and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is under considerable pressure from his own right-wing of his party to take tougher action against migration. Since Brexit, net immigration has increased significantly to around 750,000 people in 2022. And Sunak had made it a key priority of his government to end the irregular entry of migrants in small boats across the English Channel. In 2022, around 46,000 people came to Great Britain this way. So far this year, the number is significantly lower. For the British Prime Minister, the project is also about the election campaign. A new parliament must be elected by January 2025. Observers expect a vote in autumn 2024 at the latest. And the Tories see an opportunity in tough action against irregular immigrants. Brexit class workers were supporters of Brexit, and that's why. And Home Secretary James Cleverly actually wanted to more than double the amount to those 38,700, as he had only announced at the beginning of December. It has now been announced that as a first step, the amount will only be increased to those 29,000. And this gave those affected more time to prepare, at least according to Interior State Secretary Tom Pursglove. The measure is part of a package with which the government wants to drastically reduce net immigration, as I said. And so the required annual income for foreign skilled workers is also to rise from 26,200 to 38,700. Otherwise, they will not be allowed to remain employed or be hired. Business representatives warn that this will put companies under further pressure. But sectors such as education and culture may also find it more difficult to attract foreign skilled workers. But this is entirely intentional. The Conservatives promise that Brexit should bring better paid jobs for Brits, and little of this has been seen so far. But the numbers have changed enormously. As I said, a total of 750,000 people immigrated into the UK in 22 net, and that is around 3 times as many as before Brexit. And since then, EU citizens have stayed away. And thanks to a new system, many people come from Commonwealth countries such as India, especially in sectors with a major shortage of skilled workers such as nursing and health. The numbers are a thorn in the side of the Conservatives. Sunak is therefore under pressure from the Tory right wing. And in order to stop irregular migration in small boats across the English Channel, the government has already introduced several strict laws, largely without success. The government is therefore now taking on regular immigration. Home Secretary Cleverly announced that immigration would fall by 300,000 people. A few thousand of them are partners who will no longer be allowed to join in the future. And critics warn of social explosives here. Liberal media have been reporting for weeks on the uncertain fates of couples whose future together is at stake now. According to the government, 25% of the working population cannot yet afford to have a foreign partner to live with them. If the minimum income would have risen to 38,000, it would increase to 75%. Everyone feels like the rug has been pulled out from under them. That was said by Jane Yilmaz of the Reunite Families campaign after the devastating announcement in the Guardian newspaper. Many people's hope of being able to return home with their foreign partner has been dashed. But the group has announced a lawsuit. And the organization The 3 Million, which represents the interests of EU citizens in the UK, spoke of a blatant attack on families across the country. According to critics, the fact that the required amount is now slightly lower than announced makes little difference. But there's also trouble for the Prime Minister in his own camp now. The government is showing weakness, but the country is in a crisis due to the high level of immigration. That was said by right-wing Conservative Tory MP David Jones. The start of the 2024 election year is likely to be uncomfortable for Rishi Sunak. And just as a side note, if Rishi Sunak's Indian wife came to Britain now, there would be no problem. Before his political career, the Prime Minister earned millions as an investment banker. But in contrast to the head of government, tens of thousands of Brits with foreign partners face an uncertain fate now. The Migration Advisory Committee, that's an independent panel that advises the government, said that there were reasons to expect a significant decline in the numbers in the next few years. But it said immigration would not dip to very low numbers without other major policy changes. British doctors and nurses, for example, are fleeing the NHS, and it is struggling to recruit homegrown replacements because of low wages and grueling work conditions. The committee called for better wages, saying that they remain deeply disappointed that the UK government continues to exhibit no ambition in this area. Mr. Sunak has not set a target for net migration, which experts said was wise because a previous Conservative Prime Minister, his name was David Cameron if you remember, was haunted by his pledge to cut new arrivals to the tens of thousands. It is not even clear what the optimum level of legal migration should be. This is a complex political and economic calculation that involves long-term demographic trends, questions about population density, and issues of social cohesion. It is vexing Western countries, including France, which just passed a new strict immigration law, and the United States, where the southern border looms large in the 2024 presidential race. In Britain, images of refugees landing on beaches in unseaworthy boats are posted on social media by Nigel Farage, a populist politician and broadcaster who turned immigration into an emotive issue before the Brexit vote. His new party, Reform UK, a descendant of the Brexit party, threatens to siphon votes from the Tories on this topic. One of the riddles of the current immigration debate, however, is why the broader population remains relatively relaxed about the record numbers when people were far more hostile a decade ago. It may reflect a recognition that Britain is suffering a labour shortage, which would be even more acute without the new arrivals. Another explanation experts said is that the migrants are gravitating to larger cities where the hospitals and universities are. These destinations are already more diverse than towns and villages, where the influx of outsiders a decade ago was more noticeable. For example, fruit and vegetable pickers from Eastern Europe. People notice it in emergency rooms, but they don't mind that because they know the NHS is in crisis. That was said by Robert Ford. He's a professor of politics at the University of Manchester. When you see highly skilled professionals who are non-white, it's very different when you had unskilled migrants from Poland or Romania moving into rural areas speaking no English, he said. The intense news coverage of the Rwanda policy and the divisions it has exposed between conservative lawmakers has made people somewhat more concerned about immigration, according to recent polls. But the issue still ranks behind kitchen table concerns like the cost of living and roughly even with the frayed state of Britain's health service. And it comes after several years in which public attitudes towards immigration had steadily improved. And even now, pollsters say Britain's view of the role of immigration more positively than they did before Brexit. So we will see how that will continue. And if you want to see something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.